Hello and welcome to Chronorium Keeper. Today we're going to talk about the black sheep of the Call of Duty franchise. VanGOATED! If you're at least a little bit familiar with COD, you probably don't need me to tell you that Vanguard was a troubled game, to say the least. From a lackluster campaign that paid little respect to the deadliest conflict in human history, to a forgettable, flashy, copy-paste multiplayer from Modern Warfare 19, to whatever the hell Zombies was, Vanguard had a load of issues. But I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm here to talk about the seasonal storyline, if you could call it a storyline, that came out of Vanguard's launch. I guess this could be a spoiler warning, but honestly, this story jumps the shark so many times it might as well be doing somersaults over it. So honestly, you're not missing much by getting spoiled. Where this story begins is, oddly, in Black Ops Cold War, its last seasonal cutscene. 5 days after, spoiler for a 2-year-old cutscene, Russell Adler shot and killed Stitch, he, alongside Frank Woods, Alex Mason, and Jason Hudson, traveled to an abandoned Nazi bunker beneath Verdansk. But, turns out, an elderly Carver Butcher, the quartermaster from Call of Duty World War II, beat them to the punch. He tells the guys to calm down and begins to tell the tale of how he hunted down the last remnants of the Nazi regime in Caldera. We begin on December 3rd, 1944, with Butcher and Allied Special Operations Group Task Force Trident, consisting of Francis Kai Lanakila, Lewis Howard, and Isabella Rosario Dolnuan Reyes von Longest Name Ever Wittgenstein, flying over the Pacific Ocean, eventually reaching Caldera. After getting their plane shot down by German defenses, they crash land on the island itself, with Butcher getting separated from his team. But, lucky him, he manages to discover a hidden bunker, which supposedly contains intel about Nebula 5, an early version of the Nova 6 gas developed by the Nazis in Black Ops 1. The intel leads Butcher to a castle deep in the Alps, where he and Task Force Yeti, consisting of Anna Drake, Thomas Bolt, and Gustavo dos Santos, climb up and infiltrate the Nazi base. They then proceed to have an action movie cutscene where people are flipping around and doing martial arts and shit or whatever until they're deep within the building and encounter a German officer who seriously needs a throat lozenge. Long live the Fourth Reich! The officer flips the switch and releases a torrent of deadly gas in the room, and our heroes flee to safety to fight another day. But, as we soon come to find out, this is happening across the globe, even back at Caldera. As chaos ensues, Butcher orders Task Force Harpy, consisting of Mateo Hernandez from the campaign, Florence Carter, and Kim Tae-young, to intercept a Nazi arms package. But the nebula gas had already awakened something slumbering deep beneath Caldera's surface. So, besides the fact that this is kind of structured like a shitty version of Inglourious Bastards, this seems fairly standard, right? Nothing too out of place? Well, hold on to your seats, because this is where everything goes apeshit. Literally. Turns out, the nebula gas actually awakened King Kong and Godzilla. Now, they're beating the shit out of each other on the surface of Caldera, with operators stationed there trapped in the middle. Who won? I don't know, because they don't elaborate at all or follow up on it in the slightest. Say goodbye to this forever. Cut to the goddamn 1970s where Butcher and Arthur Kingsley from the campaign are going after a crashed helicopter filled with Nazi gold, and likely more anti-aging cream because they somehow look exactly the same as how they did in the 40s when they first met. Butcher and the rest of Task Force Immortal, Colm Hendry and Ikenna Aloe, get there first, and because Butcher is a huge dick, he gets into a firefight with Kingsley and his team, consisting of other operators Butcher's worked with before. Later, in 1976, the operators made their way to an island nicknamed Fortune's Keep, and I don't know, they fight over the gold or something? Whatever, again, they forgot to elaborate. Now we get to the shocking conclusion. The last stand. The villains have united under Task Force Tyrants, led by 63-year-old Raul Menendez with the laser gun from Advanced Warfare. Khalid al-Assad from 2019. Gabriel Rourke from Ghosts, who doesn't even exist in this timeline. And Seraph from Black Ops 4, who was born in... Hold on, let me check my papers. Yes, December 1st, 2027. Their plan? Well, duh, to blow up the volcano on Caldera, of course. You may be asking why Raul Menendez's master plan is to blow up the volcano on Caldera. Well, you see, the heroes have been goody two-shoes for far too long, and the villains need to get their revenge. And that's the Vanguard seasonal storyline. So, obviously, around Season 3, priorities shifted at Sledgehammer when it came to developing new content for Vanguard. And, honestly, it was just an extension of a problem that the game had ever since launch. A lot of people like to throw around the term historical accuracy when it comes to Vanguard, and believe me, they aren't wrong. It's horribly inaccurate to real-life events. But Call of Duty's no stranger to historical inaccuracies, as the many, many videos on YouTube discussing the nitty-gritty of what these games got wrong in detail have pointed out. But the difference between these games and Vanguard is that, for the most part, COD's portrayal of World War II has been relatively grounded, respectful to the events that happened, and above all else, authentic. Sure, there's minor inaccuracies here and there, but nothing so jarringly obvious that it'd take you out of the game. Like I said earlier, I don't want to go on too long about Vanguard's campaign. In my personal opinion, it doesn't really feel like it does anything to justify being set in a World War II game, beyond vaguely toying with the concept. For a more in-depth analysis on how Vanguard's campaign fails to accurately represent the Second World War, I'd highly recommend Chopper's video on Vanguard. But at the very least, it's technically still a World War II game. But that pretense just went right out the window after Season 3. It was already bad enough in multiplayer where you fight in a battle between my team and the enemy team, instead of the Allies versus Axis, like in literally every other World War II game. It's another thing entirely when you have Snoop Dogg and the Terminator running around, but it's yet another thing when you have Godzilla and King Kong fight each other, only to then jump cut to 1976 and have the main characters try and kill each other. Only to then have Raul fucking Menendez show up with a laser gun and try and blow up a volcano to get revenge on the heroes. At this point, you're not even trying to be authentic to the setting. Hell, at this point, you're not even trying to tell a story. Things are just fucking happening on the screen so you can vaguely justify why we see it on the Warzone map. And yeah, I know that there's no way that any of this continuity-breaking garbage is canon to anything whatsoever, but at least someone in the Call of Duty marketing team wants to pretend it is, considering the Last Stand cutscene with Menendez and all the villains is called a story cinematic in the YouTube thumbnail. The post-seasonal storyline is a complete failure in every regard, all the way to the end. And honestly, what a perfect ending for Vanguard. A game already laden with issues thanks to a clear lack of creative vision. Compare that to the game prior, Cold War, where it tells an actual story. The story of Stitch and Adler's rivalry, and how it boils over to destroy an entire city. Sure, it's not a particularly complex story, but it's a story nonetheless, with a beginning, an end, characters, and a plot that follows up on itself with each new edition. Vanguard didn't even have the courtesy to do that. They realized people stopped playing and probably didn't give a shit about whatever they were planning with Nebula 5, so rather than stick with their gun and try to get people hooked back in by, I don't know, making a decent narrative, they decided to not try at all and hook people back in with random cool shit and nostalgia baiting. And because of that, those few who actually cared about the story got shafted, because it basically got scrapped. It's the storytelling equivalent of jingling keys in front of a toddler. Why bother even making these cutscenes at all if you weren't going to try and make a story? All it does is confuse people at best and piss people off at worst. Actually, I'm lying out of my ass, and VanGOATED Last Stand is a masterpiece, and I'm just jealous that I'll never write anything this thought-provoking or intriguing. That's all I've got for this video. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit share, hit watch later, hit a random pedestrian on the street. Peace.